The penthouse was quiet the way expensive places always were, like the silence had been paid for. Nyla Okonkwo pushed her supply cart down the long hallway and kept her eyes on her checklist. Thursday. 6 rooms. 4 hours. Her back hurt from the morning shift at the downtown office building, the one she did before this job, the one she never talked about because talking about it made it feel heavier than it already was. 8 hours of cleaning behind her. For more to go. Her deep brown hands moved on their own by now, wiping, folding, straightening, while her mind stayed somewhere else entirely. Her mother's next doctor's appointment, her brother Kofi's school trip form that still needed a signature, and a check she wasn't sure would clear. Small things that were not small at all. She rounded the corner into the main hallway and reached for the study door handle the way she always did, out of habit, out of routine. She had her cloth ready. She had her spray bottle. She had everything she needed. What she did not have, what she had not once thought to prepare for in 6 weeks of working in this apartment, was a reason to stop moving.
So she didn't stop.
She pushed the cart forward. And that was when she heard the voices. The door was not locked. It was not even fully closed. There was a gap, maybe 2 inches, and through that gap came light and low voices and words that did not belong in any apartment she had ever cleaned. Nyla's hand froze on the cart handle. She told herself it was nothing. A phone call, maybe. A television left on. She had a checklist to finish and a bus to catch and a mother who needed her home before 9. She told herself all of this in the space of about 3 seconds, and none of it moved her feet. The voice on the other side of the door was calm in the way that made calm feel like a threat. She could not hear every word. She heard enough.
A name.
A number. Something about a delivery that was not a delivery. And then one sentence, spoken so quietly and so clearly that it seemed to press itself into the wall beside her and stay there. Nyla did not fully understand what she had heard, but she understood the shape of it. She understood what it meant when a man spoke like there would be no argument and no second chance. She took one small step back. The floor did not creak. She breathed through her nose. She was good at being still. She had spent her whole life learning how. The voices stopped. Footsteps started. And before Nyla Okonkwo could decide whether to run or stay or disappear into the wall entirely, the door swung open, and Kang Minjae walked out and found her standing right there. He was tall. That was the first thing she noticed because it was impossible not to. Kang Minjae filled the doorway the way certain people filled a room. Not loudly, not with effort, but completely. He was wearing a dark suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. His black hair was neatly parted to the side.
His jaw was sharp.
His eyes were sharper. They landed on her immediately. Nyla did not move. She did not step back. She did not let her face do anything at all. She had spent 6 weeks in this apartment learning how to be furniture, and right now she needed that skill more than she had ever needed anything in her life. She kept her hand on the cart. She kept her shoulders even. She kept her eyes on a point just past his left ear and waited. He looked at her the way she imagined he looked at everything, like he was reading it for information, not just seeing it. "How long have you been standing there?" he asked. His voice was quiet. That was the thing about it. It was not loud, not hard, not raised in any way. It was just quiet, and somehow that was worse. "I just got here," Nyla said. "I was about to knock." The lie came out clean. She had always been good at keeping her voice level. Her mother used to say she sounded the same whether she was telling you it was raining or telling you the house was on fire. Right now she was grateful for that. Minjae did not respond right away. He looked at her for a moment that lasted much longer than a moment. His expression did not change. He was not angry, not suspicious, not anything she could read clearly. He was simply looking, the way you look at something when you are deciding what it is. Then he nodded once. He walked past her without another word. His footsteps were quiet on the marble floor, steady and unhurried, as if nothing had happened, as if she were not standing in his hallway with her heart hitting the inside of her ribs hard enough to bruise. She listened to the sound of him moving down the corridor. She heard a door open at the far end of the apartment. She heard it close. She did not move. 1 second.
10.
30. She counted without meaning to. Her hand was still on the cart. The cleaning cloth was still folded over her arm. She was still standing in exactly the same spot she had been standing in when he walked out, and she did not move until she had counted to 60 and heard nothing. Then she let out a breath. It was not a shaky breath.
She would not allow that.
It was slow and quiet and controlled, and when it was done she straightened her back and looked down at her checklist and found the next item on it. The study door was still open behind her. She did not look at it. She pushed her cart forward and kept moving because that was what you did when you had no other choice. You kept moving. You kept your face still. And you did not let anyone see how afraid you were. She did not sleep well that night. Or the night after. Or the night after that. She lay in the dark of her small bedroom and stared at the ceiling and went over it the way you go over something you cannot put down. The voices. The words she had heard and the ones she had not. The way he had looked at her. The way he had not looked away. She kept returning to that moment in the hallway, the stillness of it, the weight of it, and every time she did, something cold moved through her chest and settled there. On the second day, she got out a piece of paper and wrote a list.
She was good at lists.
Lists made things feel manageable, and manageable was the only way she knew how to get through anything. The list had 7 items on it. Every single one of them was a real and serious reason to call the agency on Monday morning and ask to be placed somewhere else. She read the list twice. She folded it in half. She put it in the drawer beside her bed and thought about her mother's prescription, which was due at the end of the week and cost more than it should. She thought about Kofi's school trip deposit, which she had already promised and could not take back without watching his face fall in the way it did when he was trying hard not to show that something hurt. She did not call the agency. On Thursday, she pulled her hair back into its low ponytail, packed her supply cart, and took the bus across the city the same way she always did. She told herself it would be fine. She told herself he had nodded and walked away, and that meant something. She told herself she was a professional, and she had a job to do, and she was going to do it. The front door opened the same as always. The apartment was the same, clean and cold and quiet. But Minjae was there this time, sitting at the large desk near the window, his back mostly to her, a phone held to his ear. He did not turn around when she entered. He did not acknowledge her at all. She started in the kitchen. She worked the way she always worked, steadily, carefully, without making unnecessary noise. She wiped down the counters. She cleaned the sink. She moved into the living room and straightened the things that needed straightening. Normal work. Familiar work. The kind of work her hands could do, without asking her brain for help. But she felt it. She could not explain it exactly. Only that at some point while she was moving through the room, she became aware of something that had shifted. A stillness in the air near the desk. A pause that had not been there before. She did not look up. She kept her cloth moving in slow, even circles, and kept her face pointed at the shelf in front of her. She finished every room. She signed the log at the door. She left. On the bus ride home, she looked out the window at the city moving past and told herself what she needed to hear. This was manageable. She could do this. She almost believed it. 3 weeks passed. Then 4. Then 5. Nyla stopped counting the days the way she had in the beginning, stopped measuring each Thursday against the one before it, looking for signs that something was about to go wrong. Nothing went wrong. Minjae worked. She cleaned. The apartment held its silence around them like a third presence in a room, and slowly, without either of them doing anything that could be pointed to or named, the silence changed. It was not warm. She would not call it that. But it was no longer the kind of silence that made her want to move through rooms faster than necessary. It had texture now.
Wait.
The feeling of 2 people who were aware of each other, without saying so. She noticed the chair first. She took her breaks at the kitchen counter the way she always had, standing at the far end with a glass of water and 5 minutes of stillness before going back to work. She had never sat down, because sitting down in a client's home felt like crossing a line she had not been invited to cross. But one Thursday, she came into the kitchen and there was a chair there, a simple one, pulled up to the counter at exactly the spot where she usually stood. It had not been there the week before. There was no note. No explanation. She looked at it for a moment, then sat down and said nothing. The coffee maker appeared 2 weeks later. It was on the counter near the window, still in a quiet corner that did not interrupt anything. The brand was one she had mentioned once, briefly, to the building's concierge when he had asked if she wanted something from the cafe downstairs. She had said no thank you and named the one she liked better, more out of habit than anything else. She had not thought about it again. Minjae had, apparently. She stood in front of the machine for a long moment the first time she saw it. Then she made herself a cup and went back to work and did not bring it up. That was how it went. He did not explain. She did not ask. There was an agreement between them that had never been spoken out loud, and somehow it held. She was beginning to understand that this was how he communicated, not with words, not with anything that could be questioned or refused, but with small and careful adjustments. The quiet rearrangement of a space to fit a person he would not openly admit he was thinking about.
She did not know what to do with that.
It was not a threat. She was certain of that now in a way she had not been in the beginning. But it was not nothing, either, and that was the part that stayed with her on the bus rides home. She was used to being invisible. She had built her whole working life around it. Invisibility was safe. Invisibility meant no one expected anything from you, and no one was disappointed when you gave them less. This man kept making her visible in ways she had not agreed to. And the most unsettling thing, the thing she turned over and over on those bus rides home, was that she was not sure she minded. It was a Wednesday, which was not her usual day. The agency had called that morning to ask if she could cover an extra shift. One of the other girls was sick, the apartment needed attention before the weekend, and Nyla needed the hours. She had said yes before the question was finished. She was cleaning the last of the kitchen when she heard the front door open. She turned around because the sound was different from his usual entry. Slower.
Heavier.
Minjae came through the door with one hand gripping the frame for just a moment, barely a second, the kind of thing you would miss if you were not paying attention, and then he straightened and let go and walked in. His jacket was held against his left side, with his other hand. His shirt collar was open. His hair, which was always neat, was not. There was a tension in his jaw that he was working very hard to keep still, and she could see the effort it was taking. Then she saw the blood. It was soaking through the jacket he was pressing against his forearm. Not a little. Enough to matter. He saw her at the same moment she saw it, and they both stopped. The kitchen sat between them, ordinary and bright, and for a moment neither of them moved or spoke. His expression did not change exactly, but something shifted in it, a flicker of something she could not name, there and gone before she could look at it directly. Nyla put down the cloth in her hand. "Sit down," she said. It was not loud. It was not a question. She said it the same way she said everything, evenly, without decoration, and she was just as surprised as he probably was when he pulled out the kitchen chair and sat. She was already moving toward the bathroom. 3rd week on the job, she had opened the cabinet under the sink looking for extra cleaning supplies and found the first aid kit instead. White box, Red Cross, fully stocked. She had noted it the way she noted everything useful, and filed it away. She grabbed it now, and brought it back to the kitchen without rushing. He had set his jacket on the table. The gash ran along the outside of his left forearm. Long and clean, the kind that came from something sharp.
She did not ask about it.
She opened the kit, found what she needed, and got to work. Her hands were steady. She cleaned the wound carefully, and pressed the gauze down with even pressure, and kept her eyes on what she was doing. He did not make a sound. She wrapped the bandage slowly, and tied it off, and sat back. He looked at his arm for a moment. Then he looked at her. "You've done this before," he said. "I have younger brothers," she replied. She was already closing the kit when she caught it, just at the edge of her vision. The corner of his mouth. The way it moved, barely, upward. Not quite a smile. Something smaller than that, and somehow more real because of it. She picked up the kit and stood up and carried it back to the bathroom. She did not let herself react until she was on the other side of the door. It happened the way small things always happened. Without warning. Without meaning to. She was wiping down the desk, slow, careful circles the way she always did it, when the cloth caught the edge of a folder that was sitting closer to the corner than she had realized. It slid. She reached for it, but not fast enough, and it fell open on the floor in front of her. Her first instinct was to close it. She did not close it. The photographs were clear and sharp and printed on plain white paper. Her mother outside the pharmacy on Clement Street, a paper bag in one hand, her coat the pale blue one Nyla had bought her 2 birthdays ago. Her brother Kofi and her brother Damien walking the familiar route home from school, their backpacks on, Damien saying something that was making Kofi laugh. The front door of the apartment she had grown up in, the one her mother still lived in, with a small scratch along the bottom left panel that had been there since Nyla was 9 years old. She looked at each photograph for a long time. Then she closed the folder. She placed it back on the desk exactly where it had been. She finished the room. She signed the log at the front door. She took the bus home and did not cry on it, because crying on the bus was not something she allowed herself to do. That night she sat on the edge of her bed, and she did what she always did when something frightened her. She looked at it directly. She turned it over and examined every side of it and asked herself the questions that needed asking. If he had wanted to use those photographs against her, he had months to do it. He had said nothing. He had done nothing. The chair had appeared. The coffee maker had appeared. He had sat in her kitchen and let her bandage his arm and said thank you in the quiet way he said everything. None of that was the behavior of a man building a threat. She thought about that for a long time. On Thursday, she went back. He was at the desk when she arrived, the same as always. She put down her bag. She did not reach for her cart. She walked across the room and stopped a few feet from where he was sitting and waited until he looked up.
"The folder," she said.
"The one with the photographs. I need to know what it is." He looked at her for a moment. Then he set down what he was holding. "3 months ago," he said, "one of my men flagged you as a possible problem." He paused. "I had you watched." Another pause, shorter than the first. "And then I had you protected." The room was very quiet. "Why?" she asked. He looked at her with that expression she had never been able to fully read, the one that was not cold exactly, but was careful in a way that looked like cold from a distance. "Because you didn't run," he said. Nyla stood with that answer and did not know what to do with it. From the way he was looking at her, neither did he. It happened the way small things always happened, without warning, without meaning to. She was wiping down the desk, slow, careful circles the way she always did it, when the cloth caught the edge of a folder that was sitting closer to the corner than she had realized. It slid. She reached for it, but not fast enough, and it fell open on the floor in front of her. Her first instinct was to close it. She did not close it. The photographs were clear and sharp and printed on plain white paper. Her mother outside the pharmacy on Clement Street, a paper bag in one hand, her coat the pale blue one Nyla had bought her 2 birthdays ago. Her brother Kofi and her brother Damien walking the familiar route home from school, their backpacks on, Damien saying something that was making Kofi laugh. The front door of the apartment she had grown up in, the one her mother still lived in, with a small scratch along the bottom left panel that had been there since Nyla was 9 years old. She looked at each photograph for a long time. Then she closed the folder. She placed it back on the desk exactly where it had been. She finished the room. She signed the log at the front door. She took the bus home and did not cry on it, because crying on the bus was not something she allowed herself to do. That night she sat on the edge of her bed, and she did what she always did when something frightened her. She looked at it directly. She turned it over and examined every side of it and asked herself the questions that needed asking. If he had wanted to use those photographs against her, he had months to do it. He had said nothing. He had done nothing. The chair had appeared. The coffee maker had appeared. He had sat in her kitchen and let her bandage his arm and said thank you in the quiet way he said everything. None of that was the behavior of a man building a threat. She thought about that for a long time. On Thursday, she went back. He was at the desk when she arrived, the same as always. She put down her bag. She did not reach for her cart. She walked across the room and stopped a few feet from where he was sitting and waited until he looked up.
"The folder," she said.
"The one with the photographs. I need to know what it is." He looked at her for a moment. Then he set down what he was holding. 3 months ago, he said, "one of my men flagged you as a possible problem."
He paused.
I had you watched. Another pause, shorter than the first. And then I had you protected. The room was very quiet. Why? She asked. He looked at her with that expression she had never been able to fully read, the one that was not cold exactly, but was careful in a way that looked like cold from a distance. Because you didn't run, he said. Nyla stood with that answer, and did not know what to do with it. From the way he was looking at her, neither did he. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Minjae was in the back office of a building that did not have his name on it when Seo Jeon walked in and closed the door behind her. She was one of the few people he trusted to close a door without being asked to, which meant what she was about to say was not for the hallway. She told him quickly, and without extra words, the way she told him everything. Choi Byung-won had moved independently. An order had been placed the previous evening. The target was the maid from the penthouse, a woman Byung-won had decided was a loose end that had been left open too long. Minjae did not respond right away. He looked at the table in front of him and was quiet for a moment that Jeon did not try to fill. Then he stood up. What followed was not loud. It was not visible to most of the people who worked around him that day. That was how Minjae had always operated, not with noise but with precision, with the careful placement of pressure in exactly the right places. Byung-won was a senior man. He had been in the organization for over 2 decades. Moving against him openly would fracture alliances that had taken years to hold together, and both of them knew it. Minjae moved against him anyway. He spent the next 4 hours doing things that could not be undone. He called in debts he had been saving. He shifted weight from one side of the balance to the other in ways that would cost him later, in ways he would have to manage carefully for months. He closed off every path the order had been sent down until the order had nowhere left to go. When it was done, he sat for a moment in the quiet of the back office. Then he picked up his phone and made one more call. Nyla was on her way home from the morning job when the car pulled up beside her. She recognized the driver. She had seen him outside the penthouse building before, and something in his expression told her that whatever question she was about to ask, the answer was going to require her to get in rather than wait for an explanation.
She got in.
She was taken to a building she did not know, shown to a clean and plainly furnished room, and told that she was safe and that someone would come and speak with her soon. The door was not locked. She checked. She sat in the chair by the window and looked at the city outside and kept her breathing slow and even. Minjae arrived an hour later. He came in and sat down across from her, and she looked at him the way she had learned to look at him. Carefully, reading the parts of his face he did not know he was showing. He was still in the same clothes from earlier. His posture was straight, his hands were still, and every visible part of him was composed. But his eyes were tired in a way she had not seen before. Not the tiredness of a long day. The tiredness that came after something that could not be taken back. She waited for him to speak. Minjae did not stay long. He sat across from her for a few minutes, long enough to tell her she was safe and that the room was hers for as long as she needed it. He did not explain more than that. She did not ask him to. There was something in his face that told her the explanation would come later, when he had enough space around him to give it properly, and she had learned enough about him by now to wait. He left. The room stayed quiet. About 20 minutes later there was a knock at the door, and Seo Jeon came in. Nyla had seen her before, outside the penthouse once, in the lobby of the building another time. Always composed, always moving like someone who knew exactly where she was going and why. She was carrying 2 cups of tea. She set one in front of Nyla without asking and sat down in the chair Minjae had used and looked at her in a way that was direct but not unkind. "I'm going to tell you some things," Jeon said. "Not everything, but enough." Nyla wrapped her hands around the cup and nodded. Jeon told her about the order first. What it was. What it had meant. She said it plainly, without softening it, and Nyla appreciated that more than she could have explained. She had never liked being protected from the shape of things. She would rather know what she was dealing with than be kept comfortable with half the truth. Then Jeon told her what Minjae had done to stop it. She listened carefully. She asked one question in the middle and Jeon answered it, and then kept going. By the time Jeon finished, Nyla understood the weight of what had happened. Not just the danger she had been in, but the specific cost of the way it had been handled. The alliances that had been strained. The debts that had been used up. The position Minjae had put himself in with people who would now be watching him more closely and with less patience than before. He will be managing the effects of this for months, Ji-yeon said. Possibly longer. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Ji-yeon looked at her in a way that was different from the rest of the conversation. Still calm, still measured, but carrying something else underneath it. I have worked with him for 9 years, she said. In that time I have watched him make a great many difficult decisions. I have never seen him make one like this.
She paused.
He has never done anything like this before. Not for anyone. She stood up after that, straightened her jacket, and told Nyla again that the room was safe and that she should rest if she could. Then she left. Nyla sat with her tea and looked at the window and stayed very still. Outside, the city moved the way it always moved, indifferent, continuous, unbothered by the small and heavy things happening inside the buildings it surrounded. She thought about what it meant to be cared for by someone who had not known how to do it until the moment they had no choice but to figure it out. She sat with that for a long time. He came back that evening, just as the light outside the window was turning gray. He knocked before entering, which she noticed. He sat down in the same chair as before and rested his hands on his knees and looked at her with an expression she had not seen on him yet, not the careful blankness she had grown used to, and not the tiredness from earlier. Something quieter than both. Something that looked almost like a decision that had already been made. I'm going to tell you the truth, he said. All of it. She did not say anything. She waited. He started with the conversation she had overheard on that Thursday evening 7 weeks ago. He told her what it had been about, the names, the numbers, what the shipment was, and where it was going and who it was for. He explained what his organization was and what it did, and how it worked. He told her what his role in it was, what decisions he made, and what those decisions meant for the people affected by them. He did not use soft words for hard things. He did not pause to check her face or adjust what he was saying based on what he found there. He spoke the way she had asked questions back in the kitchen that first real conversation, evenly and all the way through to the end. When he finished, he stopped talking and waited. Nyla looked at him for a moment. Then she asked her first question. It was specific, and it went straight to the center of something he had mentioned near the beginning. He answered it without hesitating. She asked her second question. It was about something she had been turning over since the evening she found the folder on his desk, something that had not made full sense until now. He answered that one too, and the answer filled in a shape she had been looking at from the wrong angle for weeks. Her third question was quieter than the other two. He was still for a moment after she asked it, not avoiding it, just finding the honest answer and making sure it was the right one before he gave it to her. Then she asked the fourth question. The one that had been sitting at the back of everything since the hallway. Since the chair by the counter, and the coffee maker, and the bandage on his arm, and all the small careful things she had never been able to fully name. Why does it matter to you what I think? The room was very quiet. He looked at her for a long time. Not the reading look, not the careful measuring look. Just a long, still look that had nothing calculated in it. Because, he said finally, you are the only person in a very long time who has looked at me and seen something worth being honest with. Nyla did not answer right away. She looked down at her own hands, at the familiar shape of them, the small scar on her left thumb from a kitchen accident when she was 12. She looked at them for a moment, and then she looked back up at him. I need a few days, she said. He nodded once. I'll be here. And that was the moment everything changed. Not the night in the hallway. Not the folder on the desk. Not even the order that had nearly cost Nyla her life. It was this, a plain room, 2 people, and the truth laid out between them without decoration or defense. That was the moment the real choice began. Nyla Okonkwo walked into that penthouse apartment every week as someone who had spent her whole life learning how to be invisible, how to take up less space, how to be useful without being seen. And somewhere between a locked door and an honest conversation, she discovered that the most dangerous thing she could do, more dangerous than knowing too much, more dangerous than staying when she should have left, was to let herself be known. Kang Minjae had built a life on the idea that no one could reach him, that closeness was a weakness and trust was a risk no careful man could afford. And then a quiet woman with a supply cart and a steady voice sat in his kitchen and bandaged his arm without asking a single question, and reached him anyway. There is something worth holding on to in that. Sometimes the people who see us most clearly are the ones we never planned to let in. Sometimes being truly known by another person requires us to first stop hiding from ourselves. And sometimes the bravest thing is not running away from something frightening. It is standing still long enough to find out what it actually is. Nyla stood still. And what she found was not what she expected. If this story stayed with you, if you felt something in the silence between these two people, in the small things that said what words could not, then this channel is exactly where you belong. Go ahead and hit that like button if you love this story. Leave a comment below and tell us what moment got to you the most. Was it the hallway? The folder? The chair by the counter that appeared without explanation? We read every single one. And if you are new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you never miss a story from Arden Tells Tales. We tell the kind of stories that stay with you long after the last word. We will see you in the next one.